Hey everyone, welcome back. In the last video, we got this LED here to blink on and off. In this video, we're going to be adding in multiple LEDs and creating a simple traffic light project. To begin, I want to point out that even though we were able to connect these wires to the LED and to the resistor, there really isn't anything holding it on there. Meaning, if I try to set this up in real life, I would have to use my hands to hold these connections together. And the most hands any of us have is 2. So even though I might be able to pull off a single LED, if I wanted to have multiple LEDs running simultaneously, that would be rather difficult. Or at least it'd be difficult without a breadboard. So that's what we're going to add. I'm going to stop my simulation. If you don't have these components yet, go grab an LED and a resistor. If you do have them, I want you to grab 2 more LEDs, 2 more resistors, and this part here called a breadboard. Okay, so take all that out. We're going to do a little bit of adjustment, so I'm just going to kind of put that one next to the Uno, and that's usually where it goes. I'm going to select these wires and press the delete key on my keyboard. Remember, if they're not deleting, it's because you have that simulation still running, so you have to end the simulation. Okay, so everything's set up like that. Now, the breadboard you're able to plug in these components into, and the great thing about it is that these ports, like if you notice if I hover over one, if I plug in, let's say, a power source over to like this port over here, 15, okay, not only is it powering up the next one over, but it powers up that entire column. Same as if I took that and I plugged it here, it would power up that entire row. So if I wanted everything to be running off of that 8 signal, I could get it to run off. Now I'm still going to use the 8 signal. Let's go ahead, take the 8, plug it into here. I'm going to rotate these 3 resistors. I'm going to take this resistor, plug it in here. So that's our positive. Follow the line, goes through our resistor. And now we're on this line over here. And I'm going to take in an LED and plug it in there. And then take this and plug it into the ground. Okay, just like that. Now the ground isn't going anywhere, so I'm going to take a wire. And another cool thing you could do is you could like move it, and if you click down, you're able to curve the wire. So I'll click down and I'll curve it so I can create a connection to the ground. So if you think about this, we created a loop just like the one before. It's going through the 8 signal for its power, through the resistor, up through the LED, down into here, and then back to the ground. So we created a loop. Once you get back to the ground, the loop is over, and it kind of like re-loops multiple times. Okay, so we set that up once. If we could set it up once, chances are we could set it up again. So I'm going to plug in the LED one over like there, and one over like there. For this one, I'm going to use port 3. Powers it up, takes the LED, then the LED will run to the ground. Okay? Doesn't matter where it is. All this is now ground because we have it plugged into the ground of the board. So that's a loop as well. Notice how it doesn't interact with the other LED. It just goes straight back. So that's the second loop. And then the third loop would look like that. And let's plug this one into 2. Okay? So power source, up and around to the ground. Awesome. So we got everything plugged into place. Now traffic lights usually have different colored LEDs, so you can change the color of these simply by clicking on them. Let's go ahead and set this one to yellow. Click on that one and set that one to green. Okay. If you want to change the color of the wires, that's usually a good idea. Signal wires are usually depicted with a color like orange. So since that's my signal wire, I'm going to change it to orange, and I could do that with these as well. Okay, and wires that go back to the ground are usually depicted by black. And this just allows you to see the flow better. So if you had a teacher that was looking and wondering like what was wrong or something, they could more readily identify it. Alternatively, if you had a lot of loops running through here, and you don't have to do this, you could have the same color for each loop. So I could say this is my turquoise loop. So if everything was working except for this LED, I would only need to check the turquoise wires and not all the project. So I'll leave it like that actually, because the color doesn't influence it. Okay, so we got everything plugged in to 2, 3, and 8. Now let's go ahead and set this up. If we jump back to our code editor, we got the 8 turning high and then low, but we need to now set it up as well for 3 and 2. So let's add a few more outputs, grab a few more set pins, and I'm going to grab this part and break it off. So at the beginning, let's set 8 to high, 3 to low because we want it to be off, and 2 to low as well. Okay, then let's wait 1 second, or we could adjust that if you'd like to 2 seconds. And then let's go ahead and set 8 to low, 3 to high, and 2 to low. Okay, so all we're doing is we're now turning off the 8 and we're making another pin the one that's going to light up. Okay, throw in the wait, 2 more seconds, and then 3 more set pins. 1, 2, 3. 8's still going to be low. And yeah, we might not actually need the 8 because you're right, nothing is happening, but I just tend to get in the habit of having that little extra redundancy to make sure nothing really does happen. Okay, so that's 3 as low and then 2 as high. And then we're going to need some kind of wait to end this all. So 1 more wait of 2 seconds. Okay, so that's the code as well as read it over here. Let's go ahead and give this a test, see what happens. So it turns on the red for 2 seconds, then the yellow, then the green. Okay? And if you think about an actual traffic light, it usually goes from green over to red and then to yellow. So, or it goes from green and then it goes to yellow and then red. So it's kind of going the opposite way. You could swap these around if you wanted to, or if you wanted to, your assignment is essentially to get these to function in the correct way. So that's something for you to think about. Now, putting this on your board, if I go back to the code editor, this is the code that I want to put on the Arduino board. If you set this up in real life in the same way it's set up here, it should work if you put in the code correctly. To do that, what you have to do is select all that code, right click and copy it. Okay, so you copy that code. If you don't have the Arduino software, it's free to download online. Simply go to this link over here, and I'll leave that up there for a few seconds, and scroll down to the Arduino 1.8.5 as of today. It might update in the future, but if you have a Windows computer, you want to use the Windows installer, and then you want to install it. Pay attention to the installation because there's a few times throughout it you're going to have to press yes to install some additional drivers so that it all functions correctly. But once it's done, once it's installed, open it up. It usually puts a link on your desktop, and you're going to be greeted with some screen that looks like this. Okay, now depending on the resolution of your monitor, the text might be way too small. So one of the first things I do, because this is a 4K monitor over here, is I'll go to the File button, and I do apologize because I think it's a little bit cut off from this video, and I'll go to Preferences, and for my font size, I will increase it. So right now I set it to 50, and if yours is too small, you can adjust it as well so that you can essentially see it better. And then I'll press OK. I know it should make it bigger. Okay, so by default, it puts a void setup and a void loop. We'll talk more about the code later and what it means. For now, I just want you to get a code to run based on the code we had from there. So I'm going to select all this stuff, and you got to make sure you select everything. I'm going to delete it, and then I'm going to right click and paste the code from the Tinkercad software program. Okay, so once this is all in, You might think that you could just run it on your board, but it's not going to work unless your board is plugged in. So make sure your board is plugged into the computer. And then you need to go to Tools, Port, and for me, I don't have my Arduino plugged into my computer right now. But for you, there should be an additional port that says like COM some number and then like Arduino, and that's the one you want to be on. If you're not on it, it's going to give you an error every time you run this code because it's not going to detect the Arduino. So make sure you're on that, and then to compile it, you're going to go Sketch. You first want to click Verify and Compile. What that's going to do is it's just going to run and compile the code without putting it on your Arduino. So you'll be able to know if there's any errors in it. If there is an error in it, but it worked over in the program, then chances are you didn't copy it correctly. So just go back, copy it correctly, and it'll probably work out. If it does compile correctly, and it will ask you to save, also heads up on that, so save it somewhere. It'll be saved as a sketch, and we'll talk about that later. If it did work correctly, then the next thing you want to do is click Upload. Okay? Upload it, give it a few seconds, your Arduino will blink some lights, and then it will be uploaded onto your Arduino. And if it worked, it should respond right away, and it should be working right away. If it doesn't, on the Arduino, there is this little red button on the top here next to these digital ports. You can press this once and it will reset your board so that if the code wasn't functioning the correct way the first time, that sometimes fixes up the problem. Okay, so that's going to conclude this second video. Get your traffic light program to work, show it to your instructor or do it for fun, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.